Welcome to the Church Planters Experience. If you find value in these conversations, please share them with others.
I'm from Virginia Beach, same place your dad grew up.
And how long did you live there?
I lived in Virginia Beach two different times, from 1954 to 1960. Then my parents moved back up to Belleville. I was born in Belleville. They moved down to Virginia Beach when I was about 5. And when the city started moving in, people began moving out. Then we moved back up to Belleville. And I was here until 1968. And then I went into 1W service. And I started dating my wife, who was my girlfriend in school, I guess. And
Is she from Belleville?
No, she's from Virginia Beach.
Okay.
My wife's never lived anywhere else.
Okay.
So then after I came out of 1W service in 1970, we got married, and so I've lived in Virginia Beach ever since.
So how old were you when you moved to Belleville?
I was 12 when we moved back to Belleville, right. So I
12
lived
when you
in
moved
Virginia.
back?
When I moved back. I lived in Belleville from 1 to 5 and 12 to 20.
Okay.
And Virginia Beach the rest of the time, except Fairfax City is where I did my 1W service in a hospital.
Fairfax City, what state?
Virginia, Fairfax,
Okay.
Virginia.
So did you, is Virginia Beach started from Belleville?
No.
How did you have connections?
Well, okay. My Belleville at the time, the church here was way back when my parents first moved out. Even before they moved out, the church still didn't have cars, and it was sort of transitioning, I guess, from older Amish to beachy. Anyhow, and so my dad, for a year or so, went to local Mennonite church. Well, my dad was pretty conservative, so he thought that was becoming too liberal. So we moved to Virginia Beach. We moved to Mercer County Pennsylvania for about 9 months, but they didn't like it there, so they moved to Virginia Beach. And they liked it there, and we were there until the city started moving in. And it was around 1960 that about the third wave of people began moving out of Virginia Beach. So my parents owned a farm up here. They had never sold it. And so we moved back up here in 1960. And so I was here until 1968.
Okay. So that's a lot of moving around.
There's pretty good much moving around, but I didn't do much since then.
I was going to say, since you moved back to Virginia Beach, you've been there.
We've been there. We're in the third house. I mean, we've been in the house we're living in now for close to 50 years, but 40-some. But yeah, I've only lived in Pennsylvania and Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
So
were you in Virginia Beach when Farmville started?
we had left. Virginia Beach, in the 40s, a group of people left Virginia Beach and went to Stewart's Draft. The big division there was cars. Some wanted vehicles and some didn't. The ones that didn't finally moved to Stewart's Draft. And
Was that like the Mount Zion Church?
yes, Mount Zion Church, that's correct.
Dad went up there, and I remember we used to go to Mount Zion
Really?
repeatedly, I
Okay.
think once a month.
Yeah,
We'd go up there and Dad would preach for them
Sure.
when they were kind of in another transition. But
that
yeah.
makes sense. That makes sense because they came from Virginia Beach.
Okay.
Well, then in 1950s, because of the military moving in, the city moving in, that was always the problem in Virginia Beach. So then in the 50s, another group went to Montezuma, Georgia. And those were mostly Yoders. And then in the 60s, a lot of them moved out, and we were gone at this time because we were in Pennsylvania this time. But the Overholts moved to Kentucky.
Okay. So that's where like Franklin, Auburn.
Franklin and
Overholts
Auburn.
come
They
from.
all come from Virginia Beach.
Okay.
I mean, other people moved in there, but that's where they come from. Well, then it was, I think it was the end of the 60s, maybe. I'm not sure the exact year, but when some of them moved to Farmville, which would have been your grandparents, well, and your dad.
Yeah.
You don't know exactly what year.
I don't know.
It was around 1970. I can tell you that because I think when I was dating my wife, being down there, Virginia Beach, which would have been between 68 and 70, I'm thinking that's when your dad passed away, and that was still in
My
Virginia.
grandfather.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
your grandfather passed away. So that was still in Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
And then in the early 70s, a lot of them moved to Abbeville, South Carolina. That was mainly the Hirschbergers.
Wow. So you remember back during COVID, they were talking about something called like a super spreader, like a person that just spread germs everywhere. Virginia Beach sounds like a super
You
spreader.
know, there are a lot of people that have their roots in Virginia Beach. To me, that's still interesting. Like being on boards or committees or something like the Mennonite Motor Estate Committee. I go to these other places, Kentucky, Tennessee, and all that, and there's these people. Oh yeah, I knew your grandpa. He was actually born in Virginia Beach. You know, or like you, your dad. He came from Virginia Beach. I went to school with your dad, except he was about 3 years younger. He was the same grade my one sister was. Okay. So yeah, Virginia Beach has an interesting history, and there are really a lot of people that have their roots in Virginia Beach. In fact, if the people wouldn't have started moving out of Virginia Beach the way they did years ago, it would be another Lancaster County.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's good they spread around, but because some salt can become lumpy, you know, but so can sugar. But but you know, if they would have all stayed, the military and the city couldn't have expanded into Virginia Beach like they would have. They would have had to go out some other direction or go elsewhere, and now Virginia Beach would be a mini Lancaster County, really.
So you're saying if all the Amish and Mennonites hadn't sold their farms,
that's correct.
And if they'd hung on to them, that they would have forced the military and the city out of Kempsville.
They would have, because you take all the Kentucky people, now a lot of them are from Tennessee, Paris, Tennessee, Montezuma, Georgia, Farmville. That one's not as big, but Stewart's Draft. Yeah, those people had their roots there. Wow. So if they would have stayed there and kept their farms, because they owned lots of land around there, if they would have stayed there and kept the farms, the city and the military couldn't have expanded like it did there.
So has Virginia Beach really put anything out since the early 70s? Like you said, was that the last one was, did you say Abbeville?
In the 70s. Abbeville was the 70s. After that, people just sort of one by one moved. There may be something that happened there that probably affected this. Jake Hirschberger was a bishop who was, well, first of all, Paul Brenneman was a bishop who was killed in an auto accident in 1959. That shook up people a little bit. Well, then Jake Hirschberger was ordained bishop, and he was killed in 1965. Now, in 1965.
But Jake Hirschberger was killed in 1965, and Paul Brenneman was killed in
1959.
So this is only 6 years apart.
Only 6 years.
And these are both bishops.
They were both bishops. Wow. Right. Okay.
Dangerous to be a bishop in Virginia Beach.
Well, it probably had an unsettling effect on the community, but here's what was happening, especially between the time of Paul Brenneman and Jake Hirschberger. You know, people had moved to Montezuma, Georgia. People had moved to Stewart's Draft. And so the church was getting along very well. So it might have been Jake Hirschberger's vision. I don't know who all had the vision, but they thought, well, the city's moving in. Why don't we try to move together as a church? So they would send out these scouts looking for land where they could move to, and somehow it didn't work out too well. But during one of those trips looking for land, there were 4 people in the car. One was Jake Hirschberger, my father-in-law, Henry Overholt, John Henry Yoder, and Joe Hirschberger. And they were going to look for land. And they had an accident. Jake Hirschberger was immediately killed. My father-in-law, Henry Overholt, was badly injured, had head injuries, and died 6 months later. John Henry Yoder was, badly injured, but he recovered. Joe Hirschberger, the driver, was not badly injured. But that had an unsettling effect on the congregation, you know. So it was not long after that some of the fellows, some of the families went to Kentucky. They were Overholts, and they started looking for land. They found this land in Kentucky, and the whole church wasn't agreed like they were trying to do. These fellows just bought their land and moved because it was kind of apparent that you're not going to be able to move as a whole church because some of them don't want to move here, some don't want to move there. So that's what happened, and that had a very unsettling effect on. I don't know if I want to say the community or the church, or I guess both, because we never had our own bishop there again until, I don't have a calendar here, but I'm saying close to 1990. We just had bishops from other places.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because people were then just moving away and moving away. And of course, earlier on, a lot of them had been farmers, and they were still had farming in their hearts. But by this time, farms were pretty much all gone. People were realizing, look, we're not going to be farmers anyhow. We're here and we're in construction, and there's plenty of work around here. And maybe we don't have enough reason to move away. So I guess I'm one of the ones that decided not enough reason to move away, so I'm still there. So just to give you an idea what happened, when I was in school as a boy in Virginia Beach first, there were 120 students in 8 grades.
Whoa, 120 students.
120 in 8 grades.
So it was a large community.
It was a large community. Now we have between 25 and 30 in 12 grades. Well, we might not have all the 12 grades there right now, but we offer 12 grades. So, and there were also 28 dairy farmers in the community. Of course, now the last one sold his dairy farm in 1983. So that's a little bit what happened to Virginia Beach.
The last one. So
the last one.
Wow.
1983.
It's been almost 40 years.
That's right. Last dairy farm in Virginia Beach. There were a couple in Chesapeake from the Mennonite, more liberal Mennonite churches there. 1 or 2 that sold out later, but last Beachy Dairy Farm quit in 1983. Wow. So some of us are still hanging on there. But,
so the switch to construction wasn't harmful to you?
No.
Did you grow up dairy farming?
I grew up dairy farming, but I can tell you a little bit, just a little bit of my history now. I grew up dairy farming. I was in Pennsylvania. We were dairy farmers in Virginia Beach. Went back to Pennsylvania, was dairy farmer. We were dairy farmers. And so, of course, when I was drafted, I was 20 years old. So I went from a dairy farm to a city hospital right outside the Beltway in D.C. And talk about a change. I mean, it was quite different. But I actually loved it, And so then I was there for 2 years. And then afterward, my wife and I got married, so then I moved to Virginia Beach and started working at a cabinet shop, and had a cabinet, and then later on bought a cabinet shop. Had that till 2015, and of course,
so pretty much all of your adult working life was in a cabinet shop.
Cabinet shop, yes. While we're on that subject, I can talk a little bit about the business part of it, if you like that. I thought this maybe would come later, but so I worked in a cabinet shop, and things were going fairly well. It was just a very small shop.
And this is in your 20s?
I was in the 20s. I was
in your 20s.
In my 20s,
yeah,
correct. Yeah, my 20s. Oh, yeah. So, but I didn't own the building. I was renting the building, and
Wait,
then
this was your business?
I bought the business from Raymond Kaufman. Raymond Kaufman started it, and then he moved on to building barns. Okay. I bought this business from him, but like I say,
and how old were you?
I was probably 20. I was about 25. Okay.
So that's when you came back from service, got married.
Yeah, got married, worked for Raymond from about 1970 to I think in 75. Actually, I think it was 76 when I bought.
Okay.
Okay. But I didn't own the building. It was just small, and I was renting, and so I didn't know what I was doing. But a larger cabinet shop came by one day. Owner of a larger cabinet shop came by and wanted to know if I'd want to buy his business, building it all. Well, I was kind of interested in doing that, and by this time I was 31 years old. didn't know what I was doing, but we don't when we're that age. So I agreed that I'm going to do that. Well, the day I went to closing, these were difficult times. The day I went to closing, it was the first time in history that interest rates had gone up 1 full percentage point in one day. My mortgage on the shop was 12.5%.
Wow.
I had built a house. My mortgage was 8.75%, and then started running into some hard times. So I borrowed, got a second mortgage on my house for 14.5%.
Wow. That's credit card levels.
You're right. But, we used to think that credit, when I first bought the first house I ever bought, the interest was 4.75%. Well, when interest rates started going up 5, 6, and 7%, we said, well, we'll never see the 5% again. Well, guess what? We did later. But during that time, now this is very important to help you understand where I am now, when it comes to my kingdom business burdens and convictions. I was having a hard time. One reason that I was also having a hard time is, I grew up in Pennsylvania, and you kind of learn to trust people. And when I bought Kempsville Cabinets, that was the name of it, I got employees and everything. And I mean, these were people on drugs and people that lie to you, look you straight in the eye and lie. And I mean, I was 31 years old, and this was hard. So we struggled through that. And then in 1983, something happened that just completely changed things for me. I was having a very hard time. And at one period of time, I suppose we had about 5 children at that time.
And you're in your mid-30s?
In my mid-30s. In 18-month period of time, I do remember I made about $3,000. Hardly enough to support a family. Well, I did a lot of praying, but also I was told that the book of Proverbs is a good business manual. So I started reading the book of Proverbs, and I got this formula somewhere, and I've told many people about it, but Proverbs has 31 chapters, and many of our months have 31 days. So I would start, and the Bible says evening and morning were the first day. So the evening before, I would read the chapter, and then I would underline any verses that stood out to me. And then the next day, I would think about those verses. I did that a number of times, and by the time I did this a number of times, I had a business manual, because the verses that will stand out to you are verses that you actually need. And and this happened in 1983, from June to December in 1983, we gave out as many bonuses as we made from January to June of 1983. And then, things were, things were on the upswing. Things went really quite well.
I thought obviously I don't remember the early 80s, but those were high interest rates, terrible business.
They were high interest rates, but we sort of learned to adapt. They were high for everybody else. I remember during the Carter years, inflation, I think, was 13%, and interest rates went up to 21%.
Like nationwide interest rates?
Yeah.
Wow.
The prime rate went up to 21%. Hey, look.
I didn't realize it was that.
Yeah, it was. It was that high. So, we made it through that. And, of course, then things settled down, and we actually did quite well. I think.
So is 83 coming out the other side now?
83 is coming out the other side. Things are going much better. This is Kempsville Cabinets. We still have always these struggles with employees, I guess, just in a city where people have poor morals and whatever. It's kind of hard to hire good people. But so I think we had kind of a recession in somewhere around the 90s. The stock market took a really bad dip. I think it was like the later 90s. But Then in 2003, we kind of outgrew that shop, and several of the boys were helping us already.
And that's your sons?
That's my sons, yeah.
So were your sons the only Anabaptist workers in your
No,
shop?
no, I did have some church people, a few, but we don't have a large congregation.
Well, that's...
You know what? If we'd have had a large if we'd have had all or more employees from the shop working there, team members, I call them now, maybe I'd still have that shop, but I'm kind of glad I don't. Because then, well, in 2003, we bought a building, a large building, much larger, and moved our cabinet shop. And that building was a good investment. And money is not everything, but I'm going to bring out another point here because it's going to help you understand a little bit where I am. So we bought this building and moved over there. And of course, things were going really great up until 2008 when we had an awful recession. I mean, things just crashed. Well, in the meantime, I will just ask you this. I ask people a lot of this question often. What does McDonald's do for? How has McDonald's accumulated their wealth?
Well, I think through real estate.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's actually sort of where we got to up until Mountainside. Now, Mountainside is our business here where we make doors.
And that's in Belleville.
That's in Belleville. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But in the meantime, the building that I bought, it was a very good investment. The first building I had bought for Kempsville Cabinets helped buy the second one, which was a lot larger. And then 2008, the bottom sort of dropped out and things just flattened out at that time. We never really made a whole lot after that. But in the meantime, already in 2003, we had bought a building up here. Not bought a building. We opened up a door shop up here. Now, the way that opened up was, I have a cousin, Amish, lives here. I have some Amish cousins here, and I used to buy apricots from him. And so we were out under the apricot tree one evening, and he was telling me how milk prices are so low and he just about can't make it. He's trying to raise a family, and he was doing some woodworking on the side. So I suggested, well, would you like to build cabinet doors? Because in the meantime, we were building our own cabinet doors, which cabinet shops don't do anymore because the equipment's too expensive. But so yeah, he thought that was a good idea. Well, he really didn't know how, and so we basically had to do it. And of course, we hired him. So we started Mountainside. Well, Mountainside, by the time 2008 came along, when the cabinet business went south, Mountainside was pretty well, doing pretty well. Well, then one of our sons got out of it, but two of them stayed in the Kempsville Cabinets and in Mountainside. So we finally decided, you know what? We're not doing anything to speak of here at Mountainside. This is the business in Belleville, the door business, but it's profitable. We're working and doing everything we can in Kempsville, and we're just not making anything because Chinese cabinets were competing, and people there in the city, they're transit people, military people. Mm-hmm. They're not going to spend a whole lot extra. So we sold that and, of course, concentrated on this. Then I'm trying to think about when I think I sold the building then in 2017, which must have been pretty close to the time when I bought the houses in State College. So I took the real estate there, did what we call 1031 exchanges, and bought houses in State College. That's when I was up there one time interested in the place, and Joel came and said, well, hey, this house is for sale. Would you be interested? Well, then this one, you know what I mean? So I ended up with these houses in State College, trading real estate.
So why would you buy houses in State College?
You want to know why? To help FOJ. You ever heard of FOJ and ABT? That's all. By this time, I had no interest in buying them for investments. I mean, I had the kingdom vision there. I didn't really, I wasn't trying to make more money. You know, I had all these, in fact, at one time, I guess we owned about 7 houses. And I mean, I'm not taking any of them with me. And
So you own 7 houses in State College?
no, just 3 in State College.
Okay.
But several in Florida and, you know.
So is real estate investing something that you were doing earlier?
You know,
I'm just going to say for the I'm just going to say for the camera, the ones in State
Right.
College were obviously a bad investment. From a,
From
a financial standpoint.
Oh, yeah, from a financial standpoint. Well, okay, you know about those, but I told you why I bought them, to help people stay college. Well, I'll tell you how I bought the ones in Florida. The first one in Florida, there was a friend down there that was having some financial problems. He wanted to sell his house. Well, in the meantime, my wife had an aunt that was living in Ohio, and things weren't going well. Then we were visiting one time. I said, well, would y'all like to move to Florida? Oh, you know, they'd love that. So we bought the house in Florida with them in mind. We actually bought it for them. But then one of their sons, who had plenty of money, I guess, I don't know if it bothered his conscience or what, but he sort of took care of them. Then he built a little tiny house for them. So that's how the one came, how we bought the one in Florida. The other one, it was my wife's best friend who was never married. And we went down there to be with her a while she had cancer before she died. And she wanted us to buy the house. Well, my parents had just started going to Florida some, you know. And so I thought, well, this would be a nice house for my parents. So my parents were actually down there when my dad passed away. So I just kept these 2 houses because real estate is a good inflation fighter, good inflation deterrent. So, you know, I had those 2. And then also when I sold Kempsville Cabinets, the building, then I bought this, well, it was a cabin up here at the mountain, but we made a pretty good sized house out of it, which is still up there. And then, of course, our house. So it totaled 7. So
Okay.
I guess I can tell you that I always, when I invested in real estate, it was, honestly, I think every time it was to try to help somebody else out. It actually was.
Yeah. So you weren't actually investing in real, and you never, so including your shop, that was never a real estate investment. That was a shop investment.
That was a shop investment.
So you weren't separately investing in real estate.
You know what? I don't know that I ever had that desire to, I'm going to go out there and invest in real estate and make money. It was always somebody's in a situation here and they could use some help. And guess what? I could help them. And guess what happened? You know, they all worked out. So now here I am in my 70s, got all this real estate, and I'm not going to be here real long. And so I want to invest it for the kingdom. So now the shop down here, I don't intend to give that away because that we have 50-some people working there, and they all seem to be really happy.
Here at Mountainside, you have 50
we have 50-some people working there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know the shop was that.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Oh,
looks, it's nice size, but I didn't know it was that big.
So you don't want to keep that because it's a community service, and people seem to be really happy working there. And of course, we're totally out of debt and everything. And I am right now, that has enabled me to be in a position that I guess many, many people would like to be in. And I would wish it on them if they have a kingdom vision. One thing bugs me a bit is if people make a lot of money and they're just trying to, buy another farm, buy another estate, you know, we're not taking it with us. And that's a firm conviction I have. In fact, you know, sometimes I might wonder, is it right to have all this wealth? Well, 1 Timothy 6 is my favorite scripture when it comes to wealth. It says, command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty. Sometimes rich people are haughty and proud, nor to trust in uncertain riches. But in this one, you know, it can diminish so quickly. Kempsville Cabinets at one time was doing really well, and '08 came along just like that. We wrote off, I won't even tell you how much for the camera, but we wrote off so much money that we never collect. And Mountainside never had any downturn like that, except back when COVID hit, we were shut down for 3 days. That wasn't bad. But what if we'd be shut down for period,
Yeah, for months.
for good, yeah. So don't trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God who gives us richly all things to enjoy. And then I can tell you that I'm a 77-year-old man, but I enjoy life right now. I really do. It's fulfilling. And then it says, let them do good, that they may be rich in good works, ready to give, willing to share, storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life. That's my favorite scripture when it comes to finances.
So you said you're 77.
I'm 77.
Wow, I didn't realize you were that old.
Yeah, I am.
I
Yeah.
thought you were younger than that.
Well, that's all right. I probably feel
No.
young, but
And we're here in Belleville, Pennsylvania, in the middle of the winter, and you're up here. You should be in Florida.
nope. I want to be careful how I say this. I don't mind going to Florida a week in a week in the winter. That's enough for me, and it's not any point in having a house down there for that. Some years ago, our daughter and her family were in Nicaragua. They were there 6.5 years, so we used to enjoy going down there some. Florida, like I say, I would enjoy going down there for a week or so to visit, but I want to be careful. We're not all the same. But my calling is not to go to Florida to play shuffleboard. That's just it. I would not be fulfilled in that. Now I have a life that I think is fulfilled. So Florida wouldn't fulfill me.
So, at some point in your life, I think you've talked about before, you had a fairly, I want to say a transition, or you really started thinking more about how you could serve the kingdom.
Right. If I want to try to pinpoint things, I don't know how to really, I'm not quite sure where I would go with that. I would say one of the biggest ones was the turnaround that I received that the Lord helped me make by going through the book of Proverbs. That was probably number one. Number two might have been '08. That kind of helped me see that, what, these things just aren't, they're not guaranteed. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust corrupt, nor recessions and depressions break through and steal. So that probably was another big thing. I would say another one probably was becoming involved in state college.
And what year was that? Was that 10 years ago when they started?
Yeah, that was, my commissioning was, let me see. I thought I had that here. Yeah, but
so that would have been about 7 years ago, probably, because prior to that, you were there a lot. But I remember, I was actually involved in that discussion.
I think the commissioning was about maybe it was either I think it was 2018 maybe.
Okay.
I had actually thought I stuck a copy of it in here, but that doesn't matter. But yeah, it was about that time. Now, I had been on several different boards and things like that before. I was on Choice Books Board for years, and of course I'm on Penn Valley Board and a few things like that. But the commissioning for State College really was another big step in my life. Now, there's some things that interrupted that, like COVID and Jonathan's accident and a few things like that. But that also, that had a big impact in my life. And maybe the fact that, well, back, 7 years ago, I was 70 years old. Maybe that's also the time when you begin to realize, well, look, I'm not going to be here forever. So what am I doing with all this?
So, when did you become involved with All Nations? Were you,
What happened, the way I became involved with All Nations is, I suppose, seeing the brochures or whatever, I'm not sure. But I decided, well, I'd like to go over there one time when they're having an orientation, I think it was. Levi Schmuckers were there. Of course, we know who they are. His wife's related to my wife. So we went over there and, we were impressed. We liked what they were doing. I guess I should back up and say this also first. Mark Zook from New Tribes, Ethnos he was actually a good friend of mine.
okay.
So I knew what they were doing out there, and I was very familiar with that. And I wished, I don't know for how long, I wished that there was a more conservative group doing that. And I don't have anything negative to say about them, but so when I saw that ABT was doing what they were doing, we went over there to an orientation.
Is this when ABT was in State College, or was it prior to that?
No, it was
at
no,
State College.
they were State College.
Okay.
Joel's were already living there.
Okay.
Actually, I think Aaron's and Bryant's were too. Yeah, they were. Because then Joel said, well, there's a house for sale right down here, which was the house Aaron's have now.
Okay.
And so would I be interested in buying it? So I did. Well, then pretty soon, 124, which is right beside it, came up for sale. They wondered, well, would I be interested in buying that? So I did. Well, then Bryant Martin, there were some issues there. State College is expensive. Let's just say it that way. So they wanted to know, would I buy that house? So I did. So that's how I ended up with the 3 houses in State College. To make money? No. Did they make money? No. But that's all right. That's not what they were for. But my involvement in State College, although I look back, I feel like I let them down in some ways by not being there enough. But several things happened. It made a big impact on my life. And I still pray for all the people there, their families. I know your children's names and everything. I prayed for them this morning. I'm down to, now Sean and Amy, they might have children, but I don't know it. So that's kind of where I stopped. So the church is still very dear to me. But I was commissioned in, I think it was in 18, about a year, no, it was only a couple months later, Jonathan had a really bad accident, head injuries, and hardly knew whether he was going to make it or not.
And that's your oldest son?
That's the oldest son, and they have 6 boys. So that was traumatic for both of us, but especially for my wife. My wife couldn't see why we should be going to State College with a son here is in this condition. So she didn't come up with me that much at all, really. Well, then it was after a year or so after that when COVID hit, and I almost died. I was in Lewistown Hospital for 19 days. I was in Virginia Beach Hospital for a couple days. If I would have stayed in Virginia Beach, I'm quite confident I would have died because nobody was allowed in there. And we're not made to go through all that.
Yeah.
But just being involved in State College, the whole thing, just more and more as I got older, I have a kingdom vision because remember, Hector, I'm not taking it with me. And this is why I just wish sometimes I could grab some people and remind them, how much are you taking with you? So that's that. So now where I am business-wise, I'm getting rid of the houses in State College. I only have 1 left. I don't know if you know that or not.
I knew you were working on it, yeah.
Well, the one is in transition right now.
Okay.
Brian Horst are buying that one.
Okay.
And, of course, Aaron Kreiters have the other one. And so next year, I'm hoping to, this year, I'm kind of hoping to get rid of that. And it's not a rush, but I'd like to have Philip own the barn first. So that's sort of
Gotcha.
in process right now. And, he can, I'd like to donate that barn to him. And I told him if they're willing to do the legwork, why, they can figure they can have the barn. And he did fix up the barn a lot. So then I would like to get rid of the other house.
So,
But I want somebody there to have it,
right. And so you said you didn't do much in state college, and obviously you had your going back and forth was it? There was like those two big things, the COVID and Jonathan, like
Right. Those
seemed
were
like they
major.
just, but you were commissioned to help Dad as an elder.
That's why I wish I had this thing right in front of me. But yes, I was commissioned to help out until we had ordination, which we did. That's when Aaron and Bryant were ordained.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why, like, you knew Dad you said you went to school with him, is that correct?
I did.
He'd tell me about this Leon Zook guy, but I had no idea who it was.
Yeah.
But when you came to state college, like you were aware that Dad was involved there, is that right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, let me back up a little bit. Okay, I did go to school with Lloyd, but he was younger than I. Calvin was a grade behind me, so Ezra Jr. was a grade ahead of me.
Okay.
So
all three brothers were right in there.
Right. So, but, there's always that connection when you grew up at the same place. I suppose there's that connection. Well, then, Lloyd Troyers went to Missouri, and then they went over to Ukraine, right? Of course, we'd read about them. And then they moved to Belleville. And then I heard that Lloyd became really sick. He had cancer. And so we might have stopped in several times to visit him. But the one time, this one really made an impact. Your dad was so sick when we stopped in there to visit him, he couldn't even swallow. And then I told him, I said, well, Lloyd, I will tell our church to pray for you. He said, tell them to just pray that I can swallow. And I did. I went home, told the church how bad off Lloyd was, and that we should just pray that he could swallow. I don't know how long after that it was. I was up here one time, my wife and I, and Lloyd Troyer was being commissioned to go over to be the pastor at State College. And I was there. I went to the commissioning.
Okay, well, I would have probably...
That made an impact on me.
That would have probably been the first time I would have been in the same room with you that I remember.
Probably.
We visited Virginia Beach about once a year until I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably would have seen you before that. But
probably.
But I was also at the commissioning, and it's interesting that I hear people that, I run into people randomly now that say, yeah, they were at that commissioning.
Right, yeah.
So you were there.
I was there. And that really made an impact on me in several different ways. The fact that the Lord has healed him like that, and now he's going over there to State College. And I didn't know the people there that well, but I knew that they were coming from these different backgrounds. And I also know that people that come from different backgrounds are usually, they bring some of their good and not so good baggage with them. And also, people that go to a place like State College are usually movers and shakers. And movers and shakers can get a lot done if they can get along with each other. But often they can't. And so I appreciated Lloyd going over there, and I knew some about I knew a good bit about his background, but I didn't know as much as I found out later. But I just felt like he had the Barnabas personality to be a mediator and make things work. And he did. He did really well at that. So, but then even, I think it was after that, we had him down to Virginia Beach for meetings one time. Now, your dad was a storyteller. Oh, could he tell stories? And he would tell us about his witnessing out in Missouri at the red light district. And I was just so impressed. So I really looked up to your dad. I really did. I don't mean this in a whatever way, but I really feel inferior to him. I don't mean that he made me feel that way, but I just really looked up to him. And then, of course, so when I was commissioned to help the church until they had the ordination, but also to be a helper for Lloyd. Now, Lloyd, your dad and I really did connect. We talked a lot over the phone. When I would go up there, I'd stop in there to visit. And, this was really a blessing to me. He told me already, he said, when you just come in here, it just gives my spirit a lift. Well, it's the other way around, too. So we really did.
And I know it was really helpful for him, because I know when, like, occasionally we'd talk some, and he'd be like, I could tell that he was talking to you about things that he wasn't talking to anybody else about.
Oh, yeah, I
because
believe that.
That was,
yeah.
He needed that. He needed
Yeah.
to be able to
Yeah.
really talk to somebody that.
Yeah, we really had a close relationship. And then the other thing, as he got sicker and sicker, and I saw him suffer, and I thought, Lord, the man suffered so much. And I remember the last few times being there, he was holding his head because he couldn't even hold his head. I remember a couple years ago, when my wife, she was having issues with Lyme, whatever. So we had tried Gilead Balm. We were out in Ohio, and I heard that Lloyd is in the ICU here at Lewistown Hospital. So I came in there to see him. Of course, I saw him in his lowest places, And then, of course, they're at the last, physically lowest, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But so there at the last, I would marvel at how he would handle suffering, and I would wonder why the Lord doesn't either heal him or take him. But that's a terrific inspiration and a lesson. We are living in this earth where there's been a lot of sin. And, right now in my devotional, in the Old Testament part of it, I'm reading the book of Job. He didn't have it so great either.
Yeah.
And, we can wonder, well, why, Lord, why do you allow that? But I think what it does, at least it does for me, it shows me that it is possible to go through extreme suffering and still experience the grace of God, and not do like Job's wife told him to do, just curse God and die,
Right.
So I pretty much stuck with him until the very last. We would also text back and forth, but and I was just looking this morning, I have some of the texts, but the last ones, he didn't really say much. I think the last one just said thanks. So your dad was a very good friend. The church in FOJ will be on my heart until I die. Even though I don't do anything there, but I do pray for them. And I kind of feel sometimes like I sort of let them down by not being there as much as I should have or could have. But, we had these other issues, the COVID, Jonathan, and...
No, I think, you did so much for us that and helping Dad be just helping him was huge, because he was in a lot of ways alone.
Yeah, no, I know that.
And having you to be able to even if you would have never showed up in State College, I think just being able to be a Aaron and her for Dad was a huge
That's what I tried to be for him, an Aaron and a her, a listener, an encourager, and yes, one that prayed for him. And I can tell you that I did, and it's a real blessing. And yeah, when he passed away, I think about it sometimes, I have lots of good friends, but Lloyd was just really, really special to me. Really was. You had a great dad, whether you know it or not. You probably do, but I want to tell you did. I wish I could explain. Well, you'll probably know this, but movers and shakers. You know what I'm talking about. They want to get things done, but not all the same way. And I remember one thing. I've quoted your dad on this. I wish I'd know more. I wish I remember more the exact words. But okay, so the movers and shakers there were young, are still not very old, and sometimes they have ideas that might not work. Others tried it, but maybe it didn't work. And so I remember the one thing he told me. He said, I've told them, talking about some of the churches they may have come from, I don't know, not negatively, but they wanted different. And he said, you may go ahead and try your ideas, but when they go up and smoke, these churches are still going to be around. I remember him saying that. But he had, y'all all know he had a very gentle way. And they, I think, really respected him. Yeah. I feel like they did.
Yeah, he was willing to entertain ideas that I know he did not like.
Yeah.
Like I knew like from just knowing my dad that he could not have been. So I was a little puzzled sometimes that he's like, yeah, well, we can consider that. And I'm like, that's not what you're thinking, but the willingness to just engage with ideas that were completely foreign to him,
right,
I think was really helpful in keeping everybody feeling heard and also actually listening and actually.
I think it was. Like I say, I guess it's okay to say this, just maybe somebody from FOJ will see this, but I have felt different times. If it weren't for Lloyd, I'm not so sure that FOJ would have stayed together. They probably would now, but in the early days, I don't really know.
Yeah, well, I definitely learned a lot about conflict that I hadn't known before.
Yeah. Well, whenever there are people, there are conflicts, but yeah.
A lot of it. Yeah, that's great. So I did have some questions about your like what else. So you're at the age where you should be in Florida, you should be retired, but you're still fairly active.
Very active.
I see you in State College occasionally, but that's partly because you're coming to Belleville every month.
No, I'm not coming here every month, but right now, for over a year, I've been bone on bone in my hip, and the drawback to the surgery has been my heart. I've had heart issues, and I think COVID really made my heart a lot worse. And so I've been hoping to have hip surgery, but a year ago they wanted to do all these things with tests on my heart, and I didn't really want to. But in the last year, my heart has really improved. I mean, really improved. And they'll tell me that at the hospital also.
Wow, so are you working out or something?
I'm working out, and first of all, I'm going to go back. I want to give the Lord the glory, the praise. I don't care how he does it, but I was anointed. That's what the Bible says. Any man is sick among you, let him call the elders of the church, be anointed. So it all goes back to that. Then let him direct us the way he wants to. Well, when I was in the hospital here over a year ago, they were checking out my heart, and they said, yeah, your heart's not in shape for this. Your heart flutters. We got to find out why your heart's fluttering. We need to do these tests. And they said, maybe you'll have to have a pacemaker and da-da-da-da-da. Well, I wasn't ready to do all that. Well, in the meantime, my wife had been having problems with Lyme's we thought it was Lyme's, but we weren't sure, and tried different things. And then we found of a place, and I'm not advertising this, but there's a place in Tennessee called Platinum Wellness Center where they kind of specialize in treating Lyme's, and they do it with ozone. Okay, so we went down there, and my wife, we went down there 12 weeks in a row. We didn't come home every time, but and they treated her with Lyme's, but they tested me, and they said I had Lyme also. So I went through the treatment and everything. So And then they cleared us both from having Lyme. Well, then in the meantime, I also read that back in 1920s, there was a Dr. Linus Pauling that came up with vitamin C for opening arteries, vitamin C and proline. So I thought we can't hurt anything. So I'm taking that drink morning and evening. It's a high vitamin C proline drink, and so then I went in to have my meet the cardiologist back in late November, and they said, "Well," she said, "Well, you look a lot. You're a lot." Well, the doctor, she hadn't seen me the other time. Another cardiologist said, but she said, "Yeah, you'd be cleared for surgery." And so, but you got to have an echocardiogram. Well, so a little over a year ago, I had an echocardiogram. My ejection fraction was 30%. Now it's 42. So it really moved up. So, but they said I still need to have the surgery done in Danville because they have it's a higher level for cardiac anesthesia problems. So now this Tuesday, I'm up here again. You're asking, do I come up every month? No, I'm up here because Tuesday I have to have a CT, cardiac CT. Now I also came up for a Penn Valley meeting Thursday evening and Friday evening. Thursday evening and Friday. We had a Penn Valley board meeting. So, I come up here quite frequently, but I do the medical things are done at Geisinger. One of the reasons is it's a smaller hospital, but the big reason is for the plain community, they offer 80% discount right off the bat. Centera, which is our hospitals at home, the system, they're becoming alarmed that so many Mennonites, because there are a lot of them in Harrisonburg, are going away to have elective surgery. So they're trying to work with the plain people, but I already like the Geisinger system. So that's what I'm up here for now. And now this was kind of a disappointment. In November, they told me, okay, well, I'm scheduled for surgery April the 9th. So I still got to hobble around on this hip until that time. But so I'm up here partly for that. And
you also have a daughter in the area?
We had a daughter. Well, yes and no. Our daughter, Keith and Carolyn, they are living in Virginia Beach right now for 2 years for our sake, actually.
Okay.
And that's kind of the Lord kind of opened up that door. Keith loves the water, and well, she does too, but they were both nurses. She didn't have any children until they didn't have a baby for 11 years, and she went into nurses training, and guess what? She got pregnant.
No way.
And baby, yeah.
I didn't realize. I thought they still were childless. So they have a baby now.
They have 2 now.
Whoa.
So they had other ones since they moved to Virginia Beach. But so it just so happened, no, I think it was providential, but we live on a street with a dead-end street, but with at the end of our street, there's a Navy SEAL that is being transferred for 2 years, starting in August. Keith and Carolyn moved in that house, and they're planning on staying there for 2 years. Oh, we absolutely love it, because they help us out a lot, and of course, especially since I have the hip problem. Yeah. So right now they're not in Belleville, but they do plan to come back.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that's neat that they're there. I mean, wow.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you also have a son or daughter in Ripley, West Virginia?
Well, yeah. Rosemary married to Carlin Miller.
Okay.
They live in Ripley, West Virginia, which we really love Ripley, and some people are telling us that we need to be moving somewhere to retire. The house we live in is too big, but it's still nice when family comes home. But Virginia Beach is maybe not exactly the ideal place to retire. And we love the church in Ripley, but I don't know that I tell my wife I could see ourselves sliding down an icy hill and hitting a tree in the wintertime. So we're not sure what we'll do there. But with Keith and Carolyn being there 2 years, to me, it's just like the Lord said, not now. And I'm content with that. Hector, I feel like I have a fulfilled, happy life. I really am enjoying life, really am. And I will say one thing that I enjoy more, well, I feel like it's the most important part of our ministry. And yeah, I guess we're being recorded. I want to be careful how I say, but you know, the shop, Mountainside Wood Products, does very well. We have no debts. We don't have any financial obligations. Our accountant tells us that our pay scale is higher than the average, and our profit margin is higher than the average. So that means, thank the Lord, but we have some very efficient people down here. We really do. And you get 50 some Amish people, well, they're not all Amish, but that care about their jobs, their work, team members we call them, and they work hard, so things are going well. Well, guess what? I'm not taking any of it with me, but I can send it on ahead of time. The Bible says that. To me, that's one of the most fulfilling things for me right now, is to be able to do that, because Hector, there are so many needs around. Just this morning, somebody called me again about a need, and I try to balance between this. Yeah.
I was going to say, that's the next question is, and I hear this from people that so you have, I want to say the haves and the have-nots.
Right.
If you want to just,
right.
just for an easy way to talk about it. And I hear people saying, well, you know, so Dad was somebody that never had he never had anything.
Right. I'm very familiar with your dad's. Yeah.
So I would say, you know, more of a have-not. I grew up in that and haven't.
It didn't hurt you anything.
Yeah, it didn't hurt me anything. But I often heard people complaining, you know, that oh yeah, it's you had two complaints. One was from those who had something. They'd be like, well, you got to be careful because everybody just wants to take it from you. And I think that is, like, from my point of view, that looks like there is also that problem. And then you have those who don't have, who often, and this is a real big reason why I wanted to have you on, is because I hear a lot from the don't haves that say, well, you know, rich people are bad, but the Bible says, charge them that are rich in this world that they be not high-minded. And so the way I interpret that is that there are going to be rich people in this world.
There are.
And if you're one of those, then your next problem is, you know, how do you, like, I'm glad that I'm not having to make the decision that you have to make.
I'll address that. But first, let me tell you something that I heard at a colloquy at Faith Builders. Years ago, they had a financial colloquy. And somebody said, he was reading from the 1 Timothy 6. And he said, charge them that are rich to give it all away? No, he said, doesn't say that. He said, that would be kind of like saying, okay, Lord, now I'm your servant. Here are my hands, I'll cut them off, they're yours. Here are my feet, cut them off, they're yours. Do with them what you want. He said, no, the Lord is telling the rich to be rich in good works and use your hands and feet for his glory. So what I do, of course I have plenty of requests. Just this morning I had a new request, a good request. But here's what I tell people sometimes. I don't tell people this all the time, but I try to balance between about three things. First of all, there are these donations that are tax deductible, which of course we like in my situation. They are CAM Bibles for the World, you know what I'm talking about, Grace Press and churches and so on. Okay, so that's where, of course, I would give most attention to. But then, I don't know how long ago this started. I could give you a story to tell you that would tell you probably what first impacted me this way. But I'm finding out there are more and more needs that are not tax deductible that are unnoticed. I'll give you an example would be a widow. I was at a place one time where they were having a financial discussion, and this young fella got up and he was saying, I think it was their mom or somebody, they were apparently the church or somebody was supporting them, but she barely had enough. Well, she would like to give to other people too. She would like to share. So here's a widow that, let's say the church or the family or somebody is supporting her, and they're giving her enough to just get by. I tell her, I say this, they're giving her enough to buy oatmeal and beef hearts or chicken necks,
Right.
So I like to keep my eyes open for those kind of people. And you'd be surprised how often they pop up if you're looking for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example right now. I know a widower. He had 4 children. His wife was instantly killed. They have a handicapped child, and I keep in contact with him. And he had a heart attack not too long ago, and he did get over that, although it was a very serious one. Now he has Lyme's. And he says it's so bad sometimes, he can hardly work. His arms hurt and so on. Well, Lyme's can be treated, at least some of it can, but it's expensive, So who's going to help this person? He's not at a church that's probably going to be able to do a whole lot. His parents aren't going to be able to do a whole lot. His wife, his father-in-law passed away. His mother-in-law's a widow, and she's barely making. You know what I mean? So there are those needs. So we got, first of all, the tax-deductible ones, and then we have the non-tax-deductible ones. And then the third one, of course, I get requests for loans, and I do some of that, but not just for anybody, but I tell them not long-term loans. I will do bridge loans. And the reason for that is, okay, right now there's a person somewhere, always Anabaptists, people that I know pretty well. They have a family. They bought a house. No, they bought some property. They're building a house. For some reason, they can't get the money from Anabaptist Financial, but they'll be able to get a mortgage from Anabaptist Financial. So I said, okay, I will loan you the money. I'll give you 2 years. Get your house built, get your mortgage, and then, pay me back. Because, not that I need it, but because someone else will.
Right.
Yeah. And then sometime later, a fella called and wanted money to build a house. And well, it was an investment, I think. So no, I'm not doing that. So I try to balance between the taxable ones, and the loans. And that's how I try to handle the money.
And so that makes sense. Like, you probably end up having to pay a lot of tax.
I do. I pay an awful lot of tax.
So are there ways for you to hedge that tax at all? Like, I heard there's provisions sometimes for investing in schools or something like that where you can take part of your tax.
Already do that.
So,
okay, Virginia and Pennsylvania both. Virginia has what they call a scholarship program. So you can give your state, but that's for you can give to the school and you get it saves you a lot of money on your state income tax.
okay.
Pennsylvania has the same thing, so I already do that.
So you can give part of your tax to school.
Taxes
to school.
State taxes,
Right.
Yeah. And really, I could, I could save a whole lot of money, tax money, if not so much would go to these non-taxable situations. I'll give you an example. Okay, so here's somebody that is interested in buying a house from me, let's say. And let's say they're in the work of the Lord. And I'm glad to do this, but I kind of like for them to understand where I'm coming from. Okay, so let's say they can only afford 60% of the house. So I donate 60% of the house to Anabaptist Financial. That's all tax deductible. The 40% I donate to the person that's buying the house.
Okay.
Happy to do that, except what the person may not realize, that because of this, I may have to pay an extra $35,000 to IRS.
Right.
Whereas if I could, if it all be tax deductible,
So the IRS has it covered pretty good to where
the IRS has it covered pretty well. Yeah. Now, the way I could save a lot of taxes, I could probably buy whatever farms and all that. See, that stuff I'm not interested. Sometimes people would ask me sometimes, well, hey, do you want to invest in this? No, I'm just not. I'm winding down. I'm not looking for.
So all your investments now are pretty much kingdom investments. I mean,
yeah, they
and
really
they
are.
kind of have been.
Yeah.
Other before that,
Yeah,
they've been
yeah.
either that
No.
or.
Right now they are. Although I will say this, Hector. Sometimes it bothers me a little bit. Maybe it should more. We're not living on oatmeal and beef heart, chicken necks. You know what I mean? It's when you have plenty, it's easy to live a little higher
Right.
than you should. Okay, for one thing, and I can maybe make an excuse, I'm definitely not a mechanic. So I'm not going to have a vehicle or anything that's going to break down.
Right.
I'm just not, because
No point in
No
adding that
point
hassle to
in
your
it.
life if you
No.
don't have to.
And maybe one of the reasons I even feel like that is I have a brother can fix anything. Now, back in the day, I know when it first started, I think, I did a little bit of mechanic work when I was before I was married or early on when I was married. Well, then when I bought a cabinet shop, I found out something that one evening I bought a water pump to replace on a car and had 4 bolts. 3 of them came out easily. One of them I fought around half the night. And I thought, you know what? If I do this, I'm worth $2 an hour. If I design a kitchen, my time's worth $100 an hour. So why am I doing that? Ever since that, I just concentrated more on making it worthwhile. Sometimes if I have something that doesn't work, I'll just give it to my brother. He fixes it up, and guess what? He's got one. I go buy a new one. It's cheaper for me to buy a new one than to take my time. I don't know if this should be on this podcast or not. I will think about that. But that's,
but that makes sense because, and that like there again, that's something that's where the haves and the have-nots tend to kind of maybe shoot past each other because, there are those people that can fix anything, and,
right? And some that can't fix anything.
Yeah, and some that could, but it would end up taking so much time
that's right.
Or they have more valuable ways to use their time, and I've read that in business books as well. And I've just talked to a brother recently that said, he flips houses, like he'll buy a house and fix it up and sell it, but he says he does very little of the work himself because every time he picks up a hammer, he loses money.
That's right. I can understand that.
And that concept is something that we really. If somebody can fix anything, sometimes we think we should fix everything, but that's not always the best use of our time.
No, it's not. I really like the way the Lord wants the church to operate. I have firm convictions on this. 1 Corinthians 12, it says, he gave some this gift and some this gift and some this gift. And I like to think about the church as a body. That's what 1 Corinthians 12 is saying. And I like to think of, let's say, the mouth as being the teacher, the preacher, whoever is. He should be the best teacher and preacher he can be. And by the way, the Bible does teach supported ministry. It really does. Don't muzzle the ox that treads out the corn. Okay, well, then there are those that are a hand. The hand may be the one that's producing finances and doing business. He should be the best hand he can be. The mouth can't get along without the hand can't get along without the mouth. And I believe that's the way the Lord wants us to work together. I've had wonderful experiences already in doing things like building a house for somebody. I would have a lot of stories I could tell you, but yeah, we won't go there. But you know, I'm supposed to be the best hand I can be. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't talk. I should do that too. But right now, I believe that the Lord wants me to keep my eyes open for financial needs and give them in the name of Jesus. One of the business principles that I used to like to talk about, actually two of them now that we're thinking about it, because I was talking about one of them this morning. I used to give talks on finances. Some would have never happened if I wouldn't have had a bad time in going through Proverbs. But one of them was, I like, he that giveth to him shall be given. Given it shall be given you. Now, don't give to get rich. But I like the story about the monkey that got out of a cage, and zookeeper couldn't catch the thing. You probably know the story. Finally, he put an apple right inside the cage. Monkey goes in there, grabs the apple, tries to pull it out. He can't get it out, but he won't turn loose. And then he's caught. And I have seen, I think, so many people whose businesses haven't prospered because they're stingy, greedy, lack of caring for others. That's the one thing. Another thing I used to like to stress this somewhat. Especially Mennonites have this problem, and Amish. Everybody likes to get the best deal. I guess we do. Mennonites and Amish do. Well, what about the fellow that's selling to you? Does he have a right to make the living the same as I do? What does it mean when it says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you? Those are some principles that I think aren't stressed enough in our culture. Somehow we've been frugal people, and Mennonites and Amish generally aren't poor, and that's fine, mainly because they're hardworking, but sometimes some of them might not be really nice to deal with because they always want the best deal, and Proverbs talks about it. I just got this wonderful deal. When you're up there talking to the fellow that you're buying from, you say, well, this thing's really not much good. I mean, this thing is half worn out. Then you buy it. Then you go tell somebody what kind of a good deal you got.
Right, yeah.
It is not, saith the buyer, but afterwards he boasteth. Proverbs taught me so many things.
So did that help you? Did that principle help you in your business?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So when you get a good supplier, then they're willing to stay your supplier just because
I think
you're going to treat them fairly.
Yes. And, the other thing that I don't know that I ever did this. People have owed us money, but something I learned at a business seminar one time, somebody asked this fella, actually we were sharing topics, and somebody asked the fella, he was a barn builder, he said, what do you do when people don't pay you? He said, we keep on building barns. And that's sort of the approach I like to use. Now, I won't sell him another set of cabinets if he's not going to pay for it. But on the other hand, don't sweat what's past. Just move on. We wrote off enough to whatever. But you know what? It doesn't really matter. The principles of non-resistance, loving your enemies, doing good to them that hate you, going the second mile, the golden rule. Those are all things that should apply to our church life, our business life, our everyday life, all of our life.
So, I was curious about your relationship to the church in Ripley. Like in State College, you gave so much. Like I feel like with assisting Dad and with buying properties for various people, making it possible for them to live there. Those things were definitely changed the way that State College looks.
Mm-hmm.
If it hadn't been for you being there to be able to buy those properties and to be able to assist Dad, like I'm not sure what he would have done without somebody that, like, I don't know what would have happened. But I've heard that you visit Ripley fairly often as well.
We visit Ripley very often. There have been some of them praying that we would move to Ripley.
Okay.
That's actually kind of a nice feeling. I actually feel sort of like parents to the church at Ripley. They would like to have someone older there,
right,
but they don't have it. And of course, they kind of like if we'd move there, but the door's not open.
And we could talk about that one for a long time too. Like
we could.
Like the old, so many church plants. So who goes and starts a new church? Like it's not 70-year-olds.
No,
it's
younger
30
people.
and maybe 40-year-olds, but usually 30-year-olds is kind of
that's
30
right.
window seems to be the window.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm not sure why, but
well, I think I know why, because they have more energy and they're not quite as deeply rooted. Maybe it's not good to be deeply rooted, but they don't have, their business might not be quite as, I'm not sure what all the reasons are. It might not be as deeply rooted in some ways. I don't know how else to say it. But, and they have the energy. But there's nothing wrong with it being this way. If older people would only understand that, their responsibilities for the kingdom change somewhat. I might illustrate it this way. Why did the Lord choose to give parents children when they can least afford them? We have our own schools, which I think are wonderful to have schools, and I am all for church-supported schools, totally, no tuition. Now, the reason for that is because there are younger people there that have children, and I encourage large families, but they maybe can't afford to pay what it takes to send their children to school. That's where God has older people like us to be fulfilled in giving and sharing. And it may be the same way with Ripley. Yeah, there are wonderful opportunities to help in Ripley because they were a group of young people, again, that went out into I won't say a barren desert, but I will say a very hilly, rocky place.
Definitely the back sticks of West Virginia.
Back sticks of West Virginia, not totally suited for retirees, And so it takes money to get started there.
Right.
And so we have a wonderful relationship with them. Maybe we'll end up there. I don't really know. One thing about Ripley that would be an advantage for our family, it's the most centrally located because we have a son in South Carolina, a daughter in Indiana, and then, of course, we live in Virginia Beach, and Keith and Carolyn right now are in Virginia Beach, but Norman will be back in Pennsylvania. So Ripley is sort of the most centrally located, whereas Virginia Beach is not. But yeah, we have a wonderful relationship with Ripley.
But with you being in Virginia Beach, and I think we ask a lot of older people to move to State College, and you probably were one of them. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we were asked to do that. Yeah.
And so many there was kind of a real trend for a while that we were going to find somebody older besides my parents to live in State College because we just felt the need. But sometimes I kind of grinned and said, actually, at some point we'll all be older, so we can just wait.
That's true. That's
But,
right. Yeah.
and that wasn't always well received. But there is something that older people don't want to move, or it doesn't work well. But now you kind of almost have the opposite thing going on, because you're living in Virginia Beach where none of your children live. Is that right?
Well, actually, we have a daughter, she's not a Mennonite, let's say it that way, not living the way we would like at all. And then Jonathan lives there.
So you have 2 children in Virginia Beach?
We have 2 children. Well, right now, 3 with Carolyn.
Okay.
But Jonathan and his boys live there. And maybe kind of unlikely we would move with Jonathan's staying there. But Jonathan's boys, he really has solid Christian boys. But their eyes are not exactly in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
They have these friends all these other places. Virginia Beach is a small community, and they have friends in other places, and in a couple of years they may be getting married, and chances very likely that they won't stay in Virginia Beach. One of the reasons could be the very reason that people have moved out of Virginia Beach over the years is because of expensive real estate. Now, I know it's expensive in State College too, but Virginia Beach is just, unless your parents or somebody is helping you with a house, you're probably not going to get one if you're young.
Okay. So
it's expensive there.
The real estate problem is there too.
It is.
But with this trend with Mennonites moving into cities, the Virginia Beach kind of has just been there. It was there long before the city was there.
Right.
Do you get has anybody in the church kind of developed that vision, or is that more people still thinking, well, we should probably?
No, they have developed that vision. Harry Argo, and of course he's got a terrific ministry among young people. There are college people and especially college students, and he gets the church involved in them. And there are some of the younger families that say once in a while, well, look, we send people off in the city somewhere. We're already here. Okay, I agree with it, and I understand that, but there is one difference between Virginia Beach, let's say, and New York City. I'm going to make a cabinet illustration. One of the things that made it hard to be competitive in Virginia Beach for cabinetry was because you have people living in Alabama somewhere, or China, for example, that have cheap labor and can build a product and send it to Virginia Beach. You will never build cabinets in New York City and send them to West Virginia. Never. Okay. So you've got, you see what I'm saying? Okay, so the people that are living in New York City, they're being supported by the people that are not living in New York City. Right. Very few exceptions, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So Virginia Beach doesn't have that. Yeah, it's wonderful to have a mission outreach there, but not only that, we're making our livings there.
Because you have the opposite problem, or you grew up, it's been there forever, so nobody thinks about Virginia Beach as a mission.
Yeah, that's correct.
So
that's correct.
Then there's not money flowing in.
No,
to
there's
support.
Not. And the other thing about us being there, most of us that are there, we were there as inflation continued rising. We had already bought our places. Like the place we live right now. Our house, well, probably sell for maybe close to $1 million, but it certainly didn't cost nearly that much to build it in '77. Well, we added on to it later, but the lot that we bought is right on a canal. It's not a deep water canal, but we had a boat going up and down all the time, while the children were there, and so I think I paid about $7,000 or $8,000 for it. Well, now.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's what we have in Virginia Beach. The ones that are there, we already have our properties. Mm-hmm. But the young ones coming up, either have to kind of get it from their parents, or now they can flip a house. They can go buy a rundown house, or there would be another thing they could do, but none of us have been very willing to do it yet. Live in a townhouse or something like that.
Right.
Somehow Mennonites don't like townhouses. They like backyards and all that. So that is the difference between Virginia Beach. Somebody from another areas supporting the New York City, whatever people, Los Angeles, but at Virginia Beach, it's not that way.
And that's something that I've wondered about, though. I mean, that very principle is this trend towards cities, and this is something we're facing right now in State College. So we're talking about what's going to happen when children get married. Like, what are they going to do? We can't, like, the cycle of somebody else buying houses for the people that live there is fairly short-lived. Like, it doesn't take long until people are like, yeah, you've been there for a while, figure it out. So somehow we're going to have to think about how to have a sustainable church in a high rent district.
I understand that. How old's Lance?
18.
Not too long before he'll want a house to live in. Where?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah. Karsten, how old's he?
Yeah.
You know what
16.
I mean? So you will run into what we're running into in Virginia Beach. Now, for State College not being very large, I don't know how far away you'd have to go before you could buy something cheaper, but still live in State College, still go to church in State College. But Virginia Beach, it wouldn't be quite that way.
Yeah, you can get into reasonable stuff at 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, we'll see. That's an advantage that you'll still have that will be good for your church, and y'all may have to consider that rather than living right there. Can you get cheap? Is there anything cheap in State College? For example, Lewistown? No.
No, that is like Virginia Beach, I would imagine has cheap areas. Because
Norfolk does.
Okay.
Norfolk definitely does, but they don't want to move there.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Right. I understand them. But so in State College, everything they've intentionally, the city itself actually bought out, like there was a trailer park there. But the city used the eminent domain deal and actually bought out of 20, 30 acres of trailer park, removed all the trailers, put in some high-rise apartments because they don't want it to be possible for low-class people to live there.
Is it all right? Is it safe to say here that I think State College is a bit haughty and snobbish?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely know that.
Yeah, I
too.
mean the area is definitely.
Yeah, it is.
They want to be, they're fairly liberal, so they claim to be inclusive and all this stuff. But when it really comes down to it, they don't want tattoos living next door.
I think I detected that.
Which we've been really lucky because we are blessed because we live right next to Section 8 housing. And
so you do have Section 8 housing.
we do.
Yeah. Okay.
Very, very little of it in State College. So it's kind of interesting. It concentrates that right in one area, which happens to be right beside us.
Yeah.
So we feel at home, at least our family, in a way that I would not for sure if I lived next door to people that were really wealthy or that were.
It would seem to me that what'll have to happen in State College, if y'all want to continue having a church there, that maybe you would have to move out a little bit. Your children, maybe you're okay, but there must be. I don't know what Bellefonte is like, or what are the other little.
We've discussed that for sure. Like Bellefonte has, for now. Yeah. The like you can buy a townhouse or a house in Belleville. I mean Bellefonte. That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Really reasonable.
Yeah.
There's deals where. There's no deals on a suburban. If it has a backyard, you're not going to get a deal.
Right.
But on stuff that's stuff that needs more help, there's deals. But that's something that I've just really not found an answer for in the city. Like I love the city vision. Like and I understand, like, you need to be next to people you can't reach people if you're
I
not next to them.
understand that. Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm not sure the balance there is.
I think y'all do really well in reaching out to the people. One thing I've been amazed at is how easy it is for y'all to have people in your homes, invite people in your homes. I know that a lot of you have done that. And I think that's very commendable. We used to have lots of company. It's a little harder for my wife anymore with some of the issues we have, and we're not as young anymore. But it seems to me that you really need to get people in your homes to really witness to them and really help them find the Lord. You know, if you can't have them in your home, I think it's harder.
Right.
Well, I really appreciate the vision y'all have over there. I really appreciate the outreach there. I think it's wonderful to have the church there. I think Ernest, the work he's doing with the students is wonderful. There's so many things I appreciate about him. There are two things that I wondered about, and I let y'all know that I wondered about it, but it's your decision, not mine. The one was, you know, I used to ask the question, where are you going to be buried? Who are your children going to marry? Where they're going to be going to school? And where they're going to be going to church? You know, and I think that's still a little bit of an issue. Now I understand that maybe FOJ would want to buy lot 1 to, where your mom lived, you know, maybe. But then I also heard that some thought, well, the church shouldn't own property. Well, you know, y'all decide that, but if the church doesn't, who does? Somebody got to own it, or I guess you can always rent. That was the one thing. The other thing, I always had a little bit of a question about whether y'all shouldn't have a little more association or identity. And I'm sure you've heard me say that, but I think there are probably more and more of y'all that are, what do you call it? It's a little bit out of the box. A little bit out of the box, Anabaptists.
Out of the box?
Yeah. You know, this was an interesting one to me. Lauren Troyer. Now, we're really good friends. Lauren's the bishop there, and we were really good friends. But, you know, they're also, well, you know, they certainly aren't mainstream beaches. And you can understand why. They don't quite know exactly where they are. So, I did not know this, but IRS, I think it was, wanted to know who they are. And he said, well, they're Ripley Christian Fellowship. And I think Selective Service. Well, the Ripley Christian Fellowship. Well, then somehow COP wanted to know who they are. They said, well, Ripley Christian Fellowship. They said, no, you can't just say that. You have to have an identity.
No, who's this?
Lauren Troyer.
No, but you're saying COP?
Yeah, but I'll get to that. Why COP called them.
But what is that?
Oh, Christian Light Publication.
Oh, CLP. Okay,
CLP,
gotcha. Okay,
yeah,
the publisher.
Light
Yeah.
Publication.
Understand that.
So they asked him, and they said, well, no, you can't just say Ripley Christian Fellowship. And so he said, well, they're Mennonites. Well, so they said, okay, they're Mennonites. Well, then later, Christian Light, I think, called him and said, because he found out more about him, said, no, you're Amish Mennonites. You're not Mennonites. Okay, so we're Amish Mennonites. Well, then he discovered later that Selective Service and IRS, one of them had listed them as Amish Mennonites and one as Mennonites. And he told me that Selective Service and IRS go through Christian Light's catalog to catalog these people. So he had to clarify with one or the others what they really are.
Wow. So
I never knew that.
So you're saying that the Selective Service and the IRS are getting information from CLP.
From CLP. Wow. Wow. You're right. I did not know that. So, you know.
I mean, that's actually kind of good.
Well, it is.
Because, I mean, in a way, because, you know,
yeah, okay.
all of us are buying school books from Ron Staff or CLP, so that's great.
Yeah. And the other thing would be, so these couple, say there's some fellows out here, if the draft would come back or something, and they say, well, hey, we're whatever fellowship, no, we don't want to go, we don't want to go to the Army or anything like that. Well, who are you identified with?
Right.
And if you're not identified with the right person, you're going to have a little bit of a problem. Yeah. So that was a new one to me. I had never heard that.
I've definitely seen that. I mean, I've thought about that a lot. Like, I know the Selective Service does, like, they do FBI level work behind the scenes to see, they check your driving record and things like that. Like, that you wouldn't think about that they are checking, but they're checking. They're checking to see who we are.
It is right.
But that's a new one for me. I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, that was a question I used to have over there about who are we? Who's the identity? And if your church gets, if you have problems, can you go somewhere else for help? And I know there was the committee, committee, Dale and Dale Heise, Ken Miller and myself, we were on the, we were, what did we call ourselves?
We called it the Advisors Committee.
Advisors Committee, yeah. That was great for a while. But, for long term, that probably isn't the way to go. And I don't know if Dale and Ken are still involved or not.
I'm not sure exactly
Dale's
what they're...
not been very well,
been
yeah. But so, and I think that maybe there are a few more of you now.
Our relationship right now is, kind of the way we're working it is with Massachusetts, with Raymond, I'm trying to think of his name is right now, Raymond. Their little church there in with Andrew and Joe and boy, all the last names are just escaping
And not
me.
Schmucker.
No,
I don't know them.
Western Massachusetts. I'll think of it here in a
Well, I'm sure they need a church there.
In Western Massachusetts.
Yeah, sure they do.
It is they're very Granby, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Joe Kurtz, Andrew Kurtz.
Yeah.
And then with Pittsburgh with Wendell Martin.
Wendell Martin's right.
Yeah. And
And then don't y'all sort of identify with Perry County or not?
Well,
I don't even know who they are.
We had, but they have morphed and I'm not sure where they're at or where we're at with that right now due to their status. They're not sure what their church status is, and we're still associating with individuals from there, but as far as the church as a whole, we're not sure what's going on.
Yeah. I would still offer that as a little bit of a concern for y'all. I mean, maybe it's not important now. It probably isn't as long as nothing really comes up. If you're not drafted, I don't know what. But it might not be a bad idea to have a little closer identity with somebody. Unless you're starting something new like the Holdemans, you're the only ones, and you're just nothing against them, but you know what I mean.
You're right. We have made a lot of effort not to be Holdemans, but I'm not sure. I mean, nothing. Again, like I'm not knocking the.
No, I'm not either.
But what I'm saying is like that exclusiveness is not what we're looking for sure.
Right.
And that's been some of the concern actually is that if we create, which there's been a lot of talk about creating a new fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
But if we create a new fellowship, is it going to exclude us from all the other fellowship? What's Ripley done? Do you know?
Ripley associates very well with one in Washington State. Would you believe?
Washington
State, yes. But then there,
what's that?
Sequoia Valley. All I know, it's a church about like them. Oh, Lauren and I have had a real discussion about this. So is Tim Overholt. Yeah, they're concerned about it because, like Tim Overholt said, well, where are we going to, who are my daughters going to marry? But now one of his daughters is dating a fella from the, we call it, Nationwide Fellowship, and a couple of them out there and Ripley have married somebody from Washington State. You know,
Really?
so they're a little bit there too. But yeah, they're a little bit concerned about it. But Lauren does say, well, you know, he says we are pretty quick to welcome other people to come and preach here. But the stickler for Ripley is they are really taking a position against internet. And so that's sort of the dividing line.
That puts
you know.
them
That puts,
in a particular fellowship.
it really does. And there are very few people there like it. I mean, there are very few people taking their position.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've already told them I would suggest they go with Compass. They don't have to go with my suggestion. You know what Compass found, right? But no, they have no internet. If they want to use the internet, two people have to go to the library.
Okay.
So,
I was actually down there before they started. Well, I say before they started. I don't think anybody had. No, wait. Tim's had moved there already.
yeah.
I was down there and just checking out, and I knew they were talking about that, and they were talking about that going to the library thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they're doing now.
They're still doing. But you know that they built a new church house, which, I mean, they needed it. They're actually starting a new an outreach this year.
I heard that they
church
might be.
is really pretty good size anymore.
Wow.
In fact, they won't take new people in there. I mean, we could move in there because we're parents, but they don't allow other families.
So basically, nobody's moving in right now until they
No.
start an outreach.
Yeah, that's right. So they've really grown,
Wow.
and they really do have a nice church. I'd encourage you to go visit there sometime.
I really want to.
Yeah.
I really want to.
Now, one thing I will say about State College that I really appreciated, I don't know that I've ever, and I've told people this, I don't know if I've ever seen a church do quite as well with sort of not quite accepting the cultural background they came from. Well, your cultural backgrounds aren't all the same. Here's what I mean about this. Okay, so Joel comes from the Bee Gees. Well, the Bee Gees had all these rules. Okay, Brian Horst came from what?
Pilgrim, I think.
Pilgrim. Okay, they had all these rules just like that. Aaron also, Southeastern, I think.
Maybe.
You know, they have their written standards, and the Mennonites are pretty strict on their written standards, much more than the Bee Gees are.
Okay.
You know. Okay, so you've had all these churches, you had these people from different backgrounds, German Baptists yet too. Okay, so they all get together, and none of them are going to quite accept the culture like they came from, but it is, I don't know if the word is surprising. No, the word's not, it's not surprising as much. I have told people already, FOJ is a good example of a church that has done quite well without bringing their culture with them. But then I've said this, but they're a pretty young church yet too.
Yeah.
So, you know, how this will go in the future, that's where, you know, your dad might have said, well, look, you know, we can try these experiments, but when this all goes up in smoke, this other church is still going to be.
Right.
I loved it. Yeah. So you've done it very well. But here's what I've told people that I think one of the keys is, you can tell me what you think, but I think it's because they have members meetings and they have men's meetings. And I said, they get really personal at their men's meetings, and they don't mind telling each other really the way they see things. Right. And I think that's kind of what's
key.
It is key. Because people have done well with that so far, but you are a young church.
Yeah.
And that's
something that we are always thinking about, and also I feel like we've remodeled. We've sometimes remodeled before we were even finished building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I think maybe that was some of the original idea, was maybe less of a membership thing and maybe less of a written rules thing. But we've gotten I want to say tight. We've gotten fairly clear on the membership thing. we have members and we have associate members.
Right.
Like we have a fairly what I would call a fairly well documented membership structure where we know who's in and who's out, and we know who's in between. But we also have on the written standard thing. When I showed up in State College, I was pretty ignorant of everything going on. The main reason that I was willing to risk showing up in State College without knowing anything is I wanted to learn from my dad. I knew that he was sick and he was getting a little better, but like I wanted to kind of sit at his feet. That was kind of the thought that I had. I want to sit at his feet and see what he's thinking, because I had been away from my dad for a long time. They moved to Ukraine in 2000, and we didn't move to State College until, I want to say, it was about 9 years ago. So
was he in State College before you were?
yeah,
Ah.
yeah.
Were you at Pleasant View?
No, we were in Missouri.
Okay.
And Dads had moved to State College. Their house in Belleville was empty, so we kind of had this transition that we wanted to do fairly quickly. I knew their house was sitting empty in Belleville, and I wanted to see what he was up to and what they were doing.
Okay.
So I kind of want to learn. I want to sit
Right.
at his feet a little and just see what's going on.
Interesting.
So
That's good.
when we moved out here, I knew nothing. I mean, literally nothing about the church. Almost. I at first thought it was just a bunch of, like, from hearsay, I thought it was just a fringe charity type, no standards kind of people that were shakers and movers and wanting to go somewhere. And I was like, that'd be interesting. Like, let's go see what's going on. So I moved out here really ignorant of what actually was happening, and discovered really quickly that, wow, there was a lot in writing. Like, this was not what I was thinking. And Dad told me pretty much up front too that, like, there's people claiming that we don't have standards, but that's a pretty thick book.
It's easier to, I won't mention names, but it's easier to join a lot of your Anabaptist churches than it would be to join FOJ. I didn't know that.
I mean, and then I discovered that, wow, like the requirements are stiff.
Yeah,
and we've read into that sense, like,
yeah,
I kind of got grandfathered in a way, just because I kind of had a back street information on what's happening with
Right.
Dad. But I've noticed that I'm to the point now where I'm kind of scratching my head. Did we overdo the standard thing?
Well, here's what I don't know whether you are or not. I can't answer that, but do realize where these people came from that joined the church there. Bryant Martin, I think his parents were Eastern at one time.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how much you know about the Eastern. German Baptists aren't the most flexible people. Beaches are, but actually, our bishop Marcus Kaufman's married to someone from a southeastern church, and when when people found out she was dating a Beachy, they weren't so sure about this. So Mennonites, which you have a lot of Mennonites are more rigid than, say, Beaches. And there's probably a reason for that. Mennonites have been pretty much structured. The Amish, they're very structured, but they do what the bishop says, and you don't really ask any questions. Well, then these Beaches, these people become, I want to be careful here, because I think there are a lot of Amish Christians, and not all Beaches are Christians, but then we find out, well, salvation's not involved in that, and so they join the Beachy church, and the Beachy churches probably aren't as structured and probably don't teach as well as the Mennonite churches do. So you have pretty many Mennonites. You know what I mean by that? Mennonites in your church, and they're pretty much structured. So it's not surprising to me that some of this is coming out a little bit more, but yeah.
See, I'm not. I mean, technically, I'm not beachy background, but I guess our Mennonite Christian Fellowship would have been a kind of a definitely beachy parented church.
Yeah.
So we would think more in those ways, but then we have that problem, the Amish problem, if you want to put it that way.
Right. Yeah.
That as soon as the goalpost is moved, people move with it.
That's right. That's right.
And if there are no goalposts, then
Where do you stop?
yeah, where do you stop?
Right.
So we have that. Like I grew up understanding that issue, or like it was frustrating to me because I would see a goalpost moved, standard would get changed, and it's just like bang.
Bang.
Everybody's just there immediately, and maybe a little past. So that kind of frustrated me
Right.
growing up. Like I realized that somehow we have raised a people that are not principled enough to live without the corral.
I understand that. I agree with you. The way I look at that whole thing, though, is I ask this question sometimes: can we counter the culture without having a counterculture? Do you know what I mean by that?
No way.
Okay, it hasn't worked very well, but I like to illustrate a little bit this way. I remember when I was really in favor of maybe not having a systematic hospital aid program, but when there are needs, you just give to the needs. Somebody goes to the hospital, we pay for it. I still like that. I still think that's the ideal. However, it doesn't work very well because somebody goes to the hospital and has a big bill, and well, guess what? They don't have any money set aside for it, whereas the system kind of makes you set aside money for it. And I think it would be wonderful to have no, I guess the word is standards, which we don't like very well, but it does seem like I haven't seen anybody counter the culture very well without a counterculture. Yeah.
Especially when you have, I mean, it seems like it's worse when you have a group that has standards and this takes them away.
Right.
You have this.
Right.
But even long term, like I would definitely agree that we shouldn't. I've heard people say we shouldn't have any extra biblical standards, and I think that's not true.
That's
because
not true.
We make agreements one way or another. We're going to make agreements.
We do.
But yeah, the thing that I've thought about more is like we shouldn't have anti-biblical standards. Like
I agree with that. Yeah.
And we have a little bit of that in our Anabaptist culture, but
yeah,
we should get rid of those. But we don't need it. We can keep the ones that are not and we need to have some sort of brotherhood agreement.
We do. Now, another question I do want to ask you, we touched on this just a little bit. It was another concern I had, and I know a little bit what's happening, but I don't know that this is going to work very well long term. Maybe I might even know some things that you don't hear, but so where are your children going to school? Who are your children going to marry? Where are you going to be buried? And, where are they going to church? Now, I know a little bit where y'all are on schooling. There's some homeschooling going on, and then, Phillips, their children are coming over here, and of course, Valley View has tuition, but I will, without saying any more, there is this Faith Builders entity that can be, where tax money can go into schools. And let's just say that's enough said. But, somebody living in State College with the income that, say, probably most of you have, is not going to be able to send 5 or 6 children to Valley View School because they're not going to make it. Now, some can maybe homeschool and some maybe can't. We tried homeschooling in Virginia Beach for a while, but I'd say it didn't really work very well.
Well,
some can do it and some can't. So where are y'all? You don't have a church house. You don't have a schoolhouse. As a church, you're not really, I don't think you're really banding together too well to come up with a place to educate your children. So where are you going with this in the future? Where do you think? I'm not criticizing.
You're talking
I'm
about
just asking.
school-wise?
School, maybe school and church.
So the church problem hasn't been a huge deal. We've been able to rent something pretty easily so far.
Okay.
The school thing has been more of an issue because there's people that don't want to homeschool. There's people that want to homeschool, and right now, like we have one family that's sitting there, driving 40 minutes every day both ways down here to Valley View. And then, we've had this discussion for years. And I don't see a clear answer to it. I feel like homeschooling, there are enough families there that are pretty certain that homeschooling is the right way to do it, that it's going to be tricky to try to actually get a full-blown school. Unless we have a lot more families. But I feel like State College, with some of the things we talked about with the price of real estate, price of living. Now there is an upside to that. The upside to both of those is that there's also opportunities, and I think when I was talking to Matthew Milioni, he said the same thing about Boston. The cost of living is crazy, but that also gives you opportunities to make money where you wouldn't have in a lower income place.
That part's true also.
So I think
I
think the people that will stay in State College are the people that sort that out. That figure out how to make a higher income and be able to stay there. But we have, I've always kind of viewed it as a so far we've been operating as a mission church. And that makes it really hard to be I don't want to, stable is maybe the right word. It makes it really hard to be stable when you're a mission church, because Dad's dealt with that in Ukraine. I know they did. They had these little church, and they'd have, they would get 2 or 3 families from the U.S. and Canada would be there, and then they'd have other families rotating through and rotating staff through, and it was always just kind of a churn. Families going home, nobody really belongs there. And I think that's like in me looking at new churches and small churches, that's something that I've really wondered about, and I've heard other people talk about as a concern as well. That you're really going to have to be native. Like a church is not really going to. It's not really going to be established, and there's always room. I guess there's always place for mission churches. There are all over the world.
There is, but I know what you're talking about, though.
They're also not a stable place to raise a family.
No.
So young marrieds are probably not going to live there. You probably won't have a school. Like some of those things, I'm not sure if they just come with the territory, and we just have to embrace that and accept that. Yeah, when our young people get married, they'll probably move to a different congregation, but. Maybe some of them, I think a few of them will stay, but because it can be done, it's just not going to be your normal, comfortable Anabaptist way of doing it. And like with schooling, same way. Like there are people that aren't cut out to homeschool and shouldn't homeschool.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe those people won't be able to live there. I don't know. I'm not sure what the solution is, but those are questions that I know that a lot of small churches grapple with. Is like, if the families that live there are going, like in order to live there, you have to go on a retreat once a year to kind of go refresh somewhere and unwind, and you spend a lot of time going back to family, or going somewhere for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and if all your holidays everybody's gone, then it kind of starts to look like maybe you're just a mission church. Maybe you're not a real church. So those are questions that I don't have an answer for. I don't know. Like I don't know if we'll ever be, I should probably say that carefully, but I don't know if State College will ever be, it's never going to be another Belleville.
Oh, yeah, no.
It's just not going to happen.
Right. I understand that. But
There-
it's a wonderful place to be witnessing, though.
It is.
It is.
And if there can be ways to stabilize what's there, which I think it seems to be happening. It's happening at a frightening rate for me, who's not a very, I mean, I'm kind of a person that I appreciate stability from a distance.
What do you think would happen if y'all would just think about living out of State College a little bit more, but going in there to witness? Harold likes to go over there to witness, doesn't he? I mean,
he has less time for it than he used
Yeah.
to because he's pretty tied up in some.
Well, is he full-time at ABT?
I'm not sure if he's not holding down 2 full-time jobs sometimes, but I'm not.
Ooh, okay.
He's definitely
Yeah.
extremely busy.
Yeah.
I have a fine friends, like Apple has this little thing where you can see where if you connect with somebody, they'll show you where they are. So Harold and myself and my mom are all in this little group where we can see where each other are. And sometimes, I'll pick up my phone and be like, I'll be looking for where Mom is. And I'll be like, wait, Harold's in Colombia. What in the world?
Yeah.
So,
But he's still living over here, though.
He's still living here.
Yeah.
So you can do that. And
Yeah.
But then the question becomes, why wouldn't we just move to Belleville? Like, why move? I mean, or not Belleville, but Phillipsburg or whatever.
Right, somewhere.
We could just totally not live in town. But there is something really, really precious about our community, like where we live right now. So we live on the main floor of a house. Jeanette, single girl from,
I know
she's
her.
our age,
Right.
but she lives on the top floor in the apartment. Next door, Delbert, he's a single guy.
Oh, okay,
he
I
lives on
know.
the top floor of a neighbor's house. And like 2 houses down the street on the other side of the street, Brian's lived there.
Okay.
And in their basement are 2 single boys.
Well,
So-
that's pretty nice.
Just within a very short distance there's just Brian's children come out and play on the road, and our children go out and join them, and we have company, and a lot of times company, we'll be on our deck with company, and Brian's will be walking on the road, and they'll stop in, and Jeanette will come down, Delbert will come over. Like, you can't have that community when you're 20, 30 minutes out of town.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's just, I don't know, they're trade-offs.
Life has lots of trade-offs. I understand that. I admire people who live in town, like Matt Peaches. They lived in Lewistown for years. I mean, that's just wonderful. Doesn't seem like everybody can do that necessarily, but maybe they could if they just would. But
It's hard.
would y'all be, if one of you died, would you be buried public cemetery, do you think? Or?
Well, I always say that I would not care to be buried in Belleville, and Dad's buried in Belleville.
I would have forgot. Okay, yeah.
A very practical choice would be Belleville.
Yeah,
but I think
because-
the airspace is going to be crowded here in the resurrection. So
Think so. Think so.
it might be better to be buried in State College.
Okay. Well, anyhow. That's not the most important thing. What? It's not, except someday your grandchildren may want to go to see where your grandpa's
Right.
buried. That is, I have a friend that was buried in a public cemetery up in Michigan. I think it's kind of sad. They had started an outreach and there was nothing else around there. And so he died. They buried him in a public cemetery. Well, someday people say, well, where's Omer Miller? Where's great grandpa buried? Well, I don't really know.
But when Virginia Beach was started, the same thing happened, because my grandfather was buried in a cemetery in Virginia Beach.
Well, it's still there.
Well, they dug him up and moved him
Did they?
They dug
To
him up and
Farmville.
moved him.
Okay.
Not to Farmville, I don't think. They moved him to the church graveyard later, the way I understand.
Which church?
Or a different
graveyard?
one.
In Virginia
Somehow,
Beach? He's not buried in the new cemetery church in the church of Virginia Beach. Not that I know, because
I'm pretty sure they moved him. Now, I can't go back and ask Dad, but I'm pretty sure they moved him.
Because there are very few people buried there, which troubles me a bit. I think if my wife and I die in Virginia Beach, we'll probably choose to be buried in the old cemetery, because the new cemetery, I think it has only several graves there, and I'm wondering if it's going to be a permanent.
No, like
type
they
of
may
site.
just move that back.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
he's probably buried in the old cemetery.
He would be buried in the old cemetery, probably.
Because I've been there.
Yeah. It's in a housing development, but it's still there.
Yeah.
It'll be there, I'm quite sure, until the resurrection. I don't.
But the way I understand is when they initially buried him, he was buried somewhere else, and several years later they moved him to that cemetery.
Well, now Robert is buried in that cemetery, the old church cemetery,
Okay.
which your uncle, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, your uncle. No, yeah, your
Yeah,
uncle.
it's my uncle. Yeah. I'm not totally certain because I haven't visited all those graves, but I remember Dad telling, I think it was him, unless it would have been Robert.
Well, Robert is buried there. I do know
I wonder
that.
if he was moved.
No, he wasn't moved, because the way I know that, because 10 years ago, maybe, Robert Jr. and when Arlene was still living, they came up, some of the children came up and kind of remodified. You know, it was, the gravestone was sinking a little bit, and they fixed it all up and everything. And so Robert's still buried there, yeah.
Okay.
One thing I want to tell you about the church and State College that I really appreciate, and sometimes I wish somehow we could copy that, but if y'all would want to invite neighbors, friends, college students, or whoever, your church would have been much better suited for it than ours, I think, because you walk into our church. I mean, a lot of these things are good, but it's just so much more of a formal feeling, whereas y'all had a much more informal feeling, and you often served a meal and it would just be so easy to tell somebody, well, hey, come to church with me. And of course, you don't really need to, just show up and eat with us and sit down and have a service with us. That is something y'all have that I really treasure, and I wish we could incorporate, but how do you incorporate that in a more formal church house? Now, I don't know how it was. How do you? I'm mainly thinking, well, no, you did it in the old church house there at, what's the name of it, States?
Hauserville,
whatever. That one.
church, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm thinking about the one in the other place, the old church. That one wasn't Hauserville. It was. If you'd say the name, I would.
Well, when I got there, we were at Hauserville, so I don't know.
Okay. What was the most recent one?
The most recent one, well, the one we're in now is, we're in a Quaker building, it's owned by Quakers.
Oh, so you're not in the one that you were when I was there.
And well, I don't know when you were there last, but we were also in like a auxiliary building of a church in Lamont,
That's the one I'm thinking about.
Okay.
Yeah, Lamont. Right.
It was a
Lamont.
Sunday school building or something
Right.
for an old church. Yeah,
That's right. But then also the porch was a wonderful
Yeah.
place, when the weather was right. And, to me, to bring people to church at a time like that and then have a fellowship meal was so ideal.
that has really been a part of our culture that I've really enjoyed, is that we rarely have a service that we don't have visitors, and probably at least way more than 50% of our services we have non-Mennonite visitors.
Yeah.
And I really do enjoy that.
See, that would be one strong point that you have in having your church right there where it is, not having a formal church house, and all that. I really admire y'all for that, and I really like that. And that's one of the things I really do appreciate. Of course, the Ripley people, now that church has really grown, but not as, they do have community people coming somewhat, but not as much. And it would be, for me, if I was a community person, knew nothing about these people, I would feel much more comfortable coming to your service than Ripley's or ours especially.
Well, the first time I was in an informal service was in Ripley, or what I would call kind of informal, because we were there and some other families were there visiting as well, and we were just there in, I think it was in Tim's garage. We set up some chairs and had a service in there. I was like, wow, we can have church anywhere. Yeah. This is pretty neat.
That's true. It's not that way anymore. They rented an old church house for years, and now they finally, probably it's been a year or two, they're having church. They're having their services in. It's pretty nice church.
A new church house.
It is new church house. Okay. It's very nice. Yeah.
Wow.
So. Well, y'all keep up the good work. You really have got a good thing going. And the two concerns that I raised, maybe they're not valid. I had them back then, but maybe it's just because I'm old and traditional and maybe it can't change very well. But, they are the questions I asked at Ripley also. Not about the building, because they do have a building. They have a church building and a school, but of course they probably have who knows how many children there already.
They might have 150 school students.
Well, they don't have that many, but
not quite there yet.
No, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're pushing 50 or something. Wow. Like they got pretty many. So yeah.
Well, and that is the dilemma that all small churches have, is that, and we face that as well. We talk about this. The question of a church building is not off the table, and we definitely talk about that pretty often.
Mm-hmm.
And it just becomes this balance of like how much do we want to go towards having a church school like a church school combination building would be really expensive.
Oh, it would.
But
it really would.
It would be a huge stability. I mean, just imagine if we could have a church school combination right there in Hauserville, like right in our community there at State College. It could really be a blessing. Like it could be an amazing kind of a hub. And we'd use it as a hub because nobody has houses big enough to do anything in either. Mm-hmm. So it could really be a blessing. But then, the thing is, we're kind of often asking these questions about how do we deal with needing to have a school or needing to have church to actually feel like we are a church. Or like with church especially, a lot of people say, well, our building, they refer to it as a church, where we will actually want to be the church, not the building.
The building is not, I understand that, yeah.
And a lot of people get that confused. And I'm not saying that just because you have a building, you get that confused, but it doesn't take long.
Yeah.
So we're always wrestling with all that stuff. Like, how do we be mobile? How do we be able to not, at some point, the financial thing of a church, right now where we are, and school as well, is if there ends up being 3 families left there, it's no problem. I mean, it's a problem, but it's not. Like, financially, having 3 families there versus 6 is not going to be a huge difference. Mm-hmm. But if you have a church and school, you should have 10 families there to maintain this.
Yeah, you should.
To maintain this whole thing. Mm-hmm. So it becomes a numbers game. And that's, I think, we wrestle with that daily. I mean, I shouldn't say daily, but we wrestle with that a lot. Like, what compromises do we want to make, and how do we want to make that work? And some people are saying, well, maybe we should go ahead and stop thinking about a 10 to 15 family church and start thinking about a 15 to 20 family church. But there's always,
somehow the Lord just doesn't shout out of the sky and tell us which way to do.
He doesn't.
What's happening with Ernest's vision and little group? Do you know?
So they have just January, they moved. When I say January, it was December. Either the last of December or the 1st of January, they moved to their new house, which is not on the hill. They no longer live on the hill.
Okay.
And I think it was, let's see, Phillipsburg started a year and a half ago. So a year and a half ago, they would have also started, like, officially incorporated their little group, which is Ernest and Michaels and Truman.
Michaels.
Michael Weavers. It's a family that moved up from a different part of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
So they've incorporated their little group over there, and so they haven't churched with us. Ernest haven't churched with us for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we get together on 5th Sundays,
right?
But just in general for about a year and a half. And then Phillipsburg started at the same time, so Joel's moved up there. So we've kind of been running 3 different groups now for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And with Ernest, no, we don't have like, other than 5th Sundays. I was just saying something to my wife, like, the other day, like, well, that's amazing. Like, we live literally. We probably live, as the crow flies, less than 2 miles from them. But if I chose not to see Ernest again,
really,
I would never see him.
Oh my!
Like, because the way the city's set up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if this was in the country, it'd be a wholly different. I mean, it'd be a totally different deal. But the way it is now, like, unless you actually make an effort or an appointment or something to see each other or bump into each other in Walmart, you just are not going to see him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's 150,000 people to see. Like, you're not going to see this other person like, unless you make an effort.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're having their own services and everything, and
he's still spending a lot of time with university students, I guess.
Yeah, most of his time is going to.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say most of his time, but he's spending a lot of time with LifeQuest.
Now, what does Mike Weaver do? What
he trucks? He's a trucker.
Okay.
So
I see.
And they bought a house on the other side of State College.
Okay.
As well as Truman did too.
Sort of out of town.
It is a little bit out of, just a little bit on the edge there.
Well, I do miss the place. I have very fond memories of it. It's still in my heart, and I think it will be till I die. FOJ, and I'm so glad for the privilege I had of being there. I just feel like with some of the things that came up, I didn't spend the time there that I should have. But you know, I'm hoping that it made some kind of a contribution to help.
It did, absolutely.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for everything you did for us and are still doing for us. I mean, and I've heard somebody recently said, all you can do is pray. He said, you've got that upside down.
I like I don't know how many articles I gave, or how many copies of that article that Harold wrote about that. Do you know Harold wrote an article about at least we can pray? He wrote an article about, he said that's the most important thing.
Okay.
He said nothing happens without prayer. I have a copy of it somewhere. I've given that to some older people and said, look, read this.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's really good. Yeah.
So I think that's powerful too. Like, I just recently read a book that talked about prayer sending in bombs. So we can send in foot soldiers, but you will need to soften it up beforehand, like send in some bombs, like send in some prayers,
right,
to soften up the area. So
I think that's great. Just like Harold said in that article, really nothing happens without prayer. So that's great. So what can I pray for you for? Hawaii?
Well, I told my family when we moved to State College that if it goes more than 10 years, that we're going to consider the door to Hawaii to be temporarily closed. I intended to move there for 2 years.
Okay.
That was my intention. We've been there 8.5.
Okay.
But I said, if it goes more than 10 years, that I'm going to be looking for something different. And so, or for a different opportunity.
Right.
And not because I don't like State College,
mm-hmm.
just because I feel like it's well staffed.
Right.
And there is, I've really, the last couple of years I've been praying a lot about Louisiana as the only church, as the only state on this, continental, Hawaii is obviously
Right.
offshore, but that doesn't have, they have two Holderman churches, which we're not going to rule them out,
Right.
but we're going to, other than that, there's no Anabaptist churches
Really?
in Louisiana.
I never knew that.
So
Wow.
I've really been praying about that. I thought we had that taken care
Yeah.
of. There was a couple families, there's actually quite a few families associated with Shippensburg and some surrounding churches that were going to go down there 2 years ago, but that is completely fizzled out now. So I'm wondering what
Yeah.
definitely praying about that.
Right. Of course, you have a family. Oldest one you say is 18.
18. He's actually
Yeah.
not even, he broke his back in, was it 3 days after his 18th birthday, something like that. Him and his brother were out pulling a sled behind a four-wheeler, and he hit a dump truck and fractured a couple vertebrae. So he's not been able to work since that happened right around the 1st of December, and he's not been able to work. So he's been really bored. He was at home for several weeks, and then he's kind of just not had much to do. So when we went to Christmas in Kentucky, he went out to Arkansas. Because he could drive truck for my brother-in-law, so he's out there. He's out in Arkansas now driving truck, delivering trusses because it's got an automatic transmission, and all he has to do is strap and unstrap trusses. So, but yeah, it's a time of transition for me for sure.
Yeah.
So what's happening? What's the next big thing in your life?
Well, one thing I didn't tell you, or maybe you knew it. Have you ever heard of Peaceful Meadows Discipleship Camp?
I don't think so.
Well, several of us, Jonathan mainly, and Harry Argo. Well, anyhow, so some of it. Harry Argo is not involved in the real estate. We bought a farm. Jonathan and I bought this farm out in Western Virginia. It's really nice. We have it's a disc shape. No, it's a U shape with a river going around three sides. Pastures over here. Over here is a mountain, goes up, and a cliff drops down to the river. Harry Argo had this vision for a long time to have he calls it a Christian boot camp, but we're calling it Peaceful Meadows Discipleship Camp. And he also goes around talking a lot about media. I guess you know that media involvement. And he said, well, we need a place to get young people away from the media and have have classes and instruction and hard work. Like if you go out there, one of his classes, you're going to get up in the morning and do push-ups, and then you're going to, whatever, and have classes, and then you can
So is it going now?
Partially. We've had several classes, training periods out there already, several. But Reuben Yoder from Mission Home, or Withville now, he and Marianne almost live there. We have a Swiss-type barn, and we have a small family from Michigan living in the upstairs part of that right now. And they're down there to help and work. Reuben and Marianne we have a log house there, which is going to be the reception center. So they're still doing work out there. We've had several seminars out there. One was by Harry Argo, Clyde Byler, and who's the other fellow, Chester Weaver. And that one had a lot to do with social media, maybe some with AI. But then, of course, it's a beautiful place for activities also, because Harry likes to get young people especially fellows, to work out. So you hike up the mountain, and we have 10 kayaks there. And it's really a beautiful place. So what is my involvement right now, especially with my hip? Well, those things take money also. So that's the one thing that I'm involved in. And then, you know, maybe one of the reasons that I would have declined moving to State College years ago, well, I personally, my wife probably would have had some other reasons too. We both would, but I have these connections at home. I like to there are these people, lonely people that I like to take. I have a couple of them. I like to take them out for breakfast. I get phone calls. I get phone. I'm just. If you ask me what I do, I might say I'm not really sure, but I'm busy all the time. Well, like right now, I'm here. I was at Penn Valley. Of course, I have to stay here till Tuesday to get my hip surgery. By the way, you can pray for me for the hip surgery because they say that putting an old man to sleep, I guess, is sort of a high risk. But I don't quite believe the Lord's finished with me yet. So we have Peaceful Meadows going. I'm still on the Penn Valley board. I'm still somewhat involved with I am involved with Mountainside. It's a couple of the boys have some interest in it. And then our children are in 4 or 5 different states. So I'm not looking for things to do. And then, there are even these things like getting rid of the houses and stuff. You don't just call up and say one day, well, I think I'm going to get rid of this house. We've been working on you probably know Brian's getting the one, and it's been that type of thing.
Yeah, a lot of paperwork stuff.
Right. And of course, I'm a treasurer out there for Peaceful Meadows right now. And the money's got to come from somewhere. And so
what are they going to look like? What kind of people are they going to take out there? Like inner city children or Anabaptists?
Not children, but both. Harry's first vision was, and they've had some out there already, college students.
Okay.
But one year they had a group of teachers there. There weren't very many. And then they've had some younger ones there already where they had classes, but then also welding classes. Like Reuben would teach welding. So the idea is to have some life skills training and media training, and maybe the difference between this and a Bible school would probably be that here you're going to work out a lot and have more physical exercise.
That is so interesting because we're actually working with Bryant and myself and some other guys are working on a conference that we're planning to put on in Pittsburgh in the end of October of this year. And it's called Caleb Summit. And we are planning to incorporate some push-ups and some running into this whole thing. We're actually going to do it in downtown Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But kind of the same idea that often we stuff our heads with knowledge, but then we just get fat and lazy.
That's right. That's right.
We're kind of trying to bring those two together a little bit.
That's what we're doing. And there's a perfect place for it. And, we will probably, once things are built more than they are now, we may do like Penn Valley for some income. We may have some family retreats.
There's a big need
like
for that.
Yeah, there's
a big need for that.
And it's a perfect place. We got, river all around, kayaking river. Yeah. We have kayaks there. We have a mountain to climb. We have, it's a nice place. So I'm involved in that, very involved in that. So I'm not ready for retirement yet. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So when are you going to retire?
When I die.
Okay.
Yeah, just, we work till the Lord comes. Only one life will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. And, I don't mean that I'm working all the time. We have our vacations. We go do this and that. But no, I don't see myself just retiring and quitting anything. I don't know how long I would last, really.
Yeah.
Life is fulfilling if we're doing something for the kingdom and for others. That's why I like to say, the one thing we talked about business, the one thing I like about Mountainside so well is it enables me to meet needs like I never was able too. And that gives me a lot of joy and fulfillment, just, so yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you find value in these conversations, please share them with others. Now go set the world on fire.